I'm Chris, and today we're going to change some brake pads. Let's do this real quick. Anytime you take on a project like this, definitely work safe. Use the appropriate equipment, use jack stands, work safe. Start off by loosening up your lug nuts, use a little bit of leverage if you have to, go ahead and jack up your car, and remove that tire. And then we're going to get right to work. Take a minute to inspect everything, but we're going to start by removing our caliper. There are two guide pins to remove, one on the top and one on the bottom. I like to loosen them up first before I remove them. This brake pad replacement was well overdue, and because of that, it's a little bit difficult to get the caliper off of the brake pads. Once you have the caliper free, you want to be careful of the brake line itself. You don't want to put any extra strain on that brake line. So I tend to put a box under there to support it. You have your brake pad, your rotor, and then your other brake pad. Loosen and remove the two bolts holding the brake pad assembly on. You might need a little extra persuasion. My brake pads were not coming off of this rotor without a fight. So the easiest thing to do is take everything off. It's not a bad idea to clean off as much rust as you can off of the wheel hub, just in case you have to do further work down the road. With just a little bit more persuasion, I'm able to get the brake pad assembly off of the rotor. Now would be a really good time to replace your rotors, but that wasn't in the budget, nor did I have time for it. So I did my best in cleaning my rotors up. Go ahead and install your new or your old rotors back on your car. You can temporarily use a lug nut to hold your rotor in place. Now I like to use a little bit of anti-seize on the threads and the studs themselves, and a little bit on the rotor. And with a little more gentle persuasion, I'm able to get those brake pads finally off of there. It's ridiculous how stuck those things were on there. Be sure to remove the old clips and make sure you get new clips with your new brake pads. With everything all dirty and rusty like this, it's a good idea to clean up as much as you can. Take a minute to inspect the guide pins. Make sure there's no corrosion, make sure there's no water or rust in there, and make sure that they're lubed up really well and that they slide in and out very easily. Install the new clips. You can see the difference in wear between the old pads and the new pads. Although these old pads don't look that bad, some of the other pads in the car were down to almost bare metal. Make sure you pay attention to the placement of the inner and the outer pads, and also apply any caliper lube that came with your pads in the recommended places. Pay attention to the orientation of each specific pad. You don't want to put it in upside down. I like to start off by just gently putting one side in, and then using a little bit more persuasion, tapping the other side in gently, and then repeating the process on both sides. Once you have your new brake pads in, we can go ahead and slip it over the rotor. It may take a little bit of finesse here to get them on the rotor if your brake pads are just a little bit too far in. And for my particular setup, loosening that lug nut that I had on there temporarily allowed me to move the rotor out just a little bit to get the brake pads on. Reinstall the two bolts and tighten them down. Apply any more recommended lube. Before installing the caliper, we have to get that piston back in. Certain pistons work in different ways. My particular setup, you have to rotate the piston to get it to retract. Other setups, you can just push the piston back in with a clamp or with the recommended tools. I always suggest using the recommended tools. If you do something like this, use caution and do it at your own risk. And once you have that piston retracted far enough, you can go ahead and take the whole caliper and slide it right over the brake pads themselves. And then go ahead and reinstall the bolts that go through the caliper and thread right into the guide pins. Put your wheel back on, hand tighten your lug nuts, remove any jack stands you have, and lower your car. Torque your lug nuts down, make sure you did everything, and go for a test drive. I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If this video was helpful in changing your brake pads, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear about it. Definitely check out my video and see what I did when my brake pads were smoking. Thank you so much.